Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I am Abby Kraus with Becker's Hospital Review. We will begin today's webinar with a presentation and we'll have time at the end of the hour for a question and answer session. You can submit any questions you have throughout the webinar by typing them into your control panel in the space labeled Enter a Question for Staff and clicking Send. We are looking forward to hearing your questions. Today's session is being recorded and will be available after the event. In about a week following the webinar, we will be sending all registrants a copy of the presentation to the email you used to register. Please be patient as the post-webinar preparation of materials can take some time. At this time, it is now my pleasure to turn the floor over to Will Riley, Vice President of Client and Consumer Marketing at VisitPay, to begin today's presentation.
Thank you very much indeed, Abby, and thank you all of you for attending this morning. We're thrilled that you've made time from your day to join us to talk about and participate in this discussion on the 5 things that every consumer expects from their financial experience. As Abby said, my name is Will Riley. I lead marketing for VisitPay. That means I'm responsible for our brand and our positioning and demand generation. But it also means I get to spend a lot of my time working with our existing clients, helping them find strategies to reach consumers and engage consumers in the financial experience. Prior to joining VisitPay, I spent a long time with IBM as a technology marketer. I'm so pleased to have 3 great subject matter experts with me today, and I'd like to introduce you to them now. First up, Michael Roldan. Michael is Senior Director of Finance and Patient Experience at St. Luke's Health System in Boise, Idaho. Michael is really spearheading within the revenue cycle team all of the work around the patient financial experience and patient financial engagement, and has been working on this space for a number of years in close collaboration with us, and really is a true expert on this space. Prior to St. Luke's and prior to healthcare, Michael has a really interesting background in high technology. He spent some time at HP, for example, where he learned and mastered some of the digital engagement tactics and digital engagement techniques that he now uses in a different setting at St. Luke's. Alongside Michael, we're thrilled to have Jenny Renee on today's webinar. Jenny is a director in the Patient Financial Services team at Inova Health System, where she's responsible for the contact center organization and approach that is obviously a key part of Inova's patient financial experience. Jenny's been in the healthcare space for a long time and has a background actually on the West Coast in Washington, where she worked previously for Providence Health System. And finally, another member of the VisitPay team, Vince Martino. Vince was one of the 2 co-founders of VisitPay a number of years ago, and so since then has been involved, as you'd expect, in all of our innovations and developments from a product perspective, which is the area of responsibility he has within the VisitPay organization. Prior to founding VisitPay, Vince has an interesting background. He was a member of the Capital One team, where he learned and developed many of the consumer finance techniques that are sort of integral to the VisitPay approach. But he also has a strong background in technology, technology development, and technology marketing. So we have a really strong team here with lots of experience in this space that we're looking forward to sharing. Before we jump into the 5 reasons, though, the 5 things, Abby, could you move to the next slide? And I just want to give a quick bit of additional context. At HIMSS this February, we published a report, the VisitPay report, which was a result of some primary research that we did into the space of patient financing. We surveyed around 2,000 American healthcare consumers on their needs, attitudes, behaviors around the space of healthcare finance in general. And as if we didn't know it already, one of the things that we found was that cost is extremely important in terms of the patient's perception of satisfaction with the health system overall. In fact, 65% of people roughly said that cost matters a great deal. Of course, this isn't really a surprise to us who are focused on the revenue cycle. But I think one key takeaway from this is that cost and the whole financial conversation that health systems are having with consumers doesn't just impact the revenue cycle. This data shows that it impacts the consumer's perception of the entire brand that they are interacting with. In other words, a bad financial experience bookending an otherwise positive clinical experience can lead to real brand detractors and brand detraction, if that experience isn't strong. And if you go on to the next slide, please, what we found is that consumers are willing to engage in that financial process because they told us some of the things that they care about the most. The number one driver of satisfaction with the experience was billing accuracy. And again, I don't know that that's a surprise to any of us. We know that patient billing is complex, right? There are multiple statements that may get sent out for different aspects of hospital service. And there's the whole problem and challenge of reconciling the insurance company's perspective on that obligation as well, that makes this complicated and makes this a bit of a shifting target for many consumers. But look at the last two factors as well, ease of paying and ability to finance. These relate directly to the consumer's ability to manage an obligation and point to, like I said, their willingness to do that. They're looking for health systems to make the payment process and payment experience easy, and they're looking for financing options that will work for them, right, and work to suit their budgets. And these are really important themes that I think will resurface time and again during our discussion today. But what we're going to do is start with a perspective from Michael at St. Luke's. We're going to turn back the clock to 2015, and Michael's going to give us a perspective of what he saw and the St. Luke's team saw about the financial experience at that time. Michael.
Sure, thanks, Will. So as Will mentioned, we started our financial experience program about 4 years ago. We know that collecting data from our patients was fairly important, and healthcare is one of those interesting industries that really didn't ask our patients, how they felt about their financial journey. We spent a lot of time, and if you're in the hospital industry, you know that the clinical side spends a lot of time collecting information, on HCAHPS and CGCAHPS performance, that it can impact your reimbursement rate. But on the self-pay side, there really hasn't been a whole lot. So we stood up a program about 4 years ago to establish, how we were doing on the financial journey with those patients. And part of me says that, we got some surprising results, but in all honesty, we weren't all that surprised. I think we were more disappointed. So as we went through that first sort of baseline process, our patients evaluated us at a 28% top box, which is really not good. And we knew we had a lot of work to do. And so, some of the comments that were fairly common on the feedback mechanisms were, to Will's earlier point, one of the items that patients come to expect is, I want to make sure that my bill is, accurate. And then part two is, I need to understand it. And we had a lot of comments related to, I just don't understand the bills. I don't understand where the charges came from. Yes, I got some service, but, they're just very confused by a lot of it. At that point, we did not have a robust digital solution. So most of the volume that we would see was in our call center, in our call centers. And so, we had a lot of volume in our call centers, and our patients waited a long time. So we weren't, helping them there. When they got in and talked to somebody, they would call in multiple times and they would get multiple answers. And so, really what they were hoping for is, the experience that they were getting sort of outside of healthcare, they were looking to get inside of healthcare. So, when they go to Amazon and shop, they wanted a very clean experience. When they went to their Capital One portal, they could, effectively finance and make those payments fairly easily and understand what those transactions were. And, that was the comparison that was made with their hospital bills. And so it's a fairly high bar, but, our patients have very high expectations and they want digital options to view and pay. And so really, we were disappointed and and excited in terms of the feedback we were getting, but, 28%, we have a lot to go. So let me hand it back over to you, Will.
Yep, perfect. Thanks, Michael. So great scene setting there. So now let's unveil the 5 things we think every consumer expects from their financial experience. This is sort of what we've learned, and you can see what we've derived from some survey responses at St. Luke's. And I'm going to hand over to Vince to just briefly take us through these before we jump into each in more detail and have a discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Will. So, before you can see the 5 on the screen, and before we speak to those specifically, I'll say that VisitPay has been lucky enough to have been partnered with St. Luke's throughout that journey that Michael talked about. So for 5 years now, we've had the luxury of being able to survey and directly access the patients at St. Luke's to really understand what they want and need from their healthcare financial experience. The results you see on the screen are the direct result of a recent survey that we did with the St. Luke's patients. About 500 respondents list these as their top 5 things that they expect from the experience. This set of information highly corroborates what we've learned with St. Luke's for the last 5 years, and we actually started that journey with Michael and his team, very, very tightly linked, doing what we would call a Lean Six Sigma exercise to really understand where the gaps were in the patient experience. And this was before, like Michael said, before there was a digital platform in place, as St. Luke's was migrating from a legacy billing system to a modern Epic EMR billing system. And that through that exercise, through that Lean Six Sigma really deep dive that we did with St. Luke's and with their patients, we identified what we would say were 87 different breakpoints in that experience. These on the screen are again from a recent survey, but they highly corroborate what we learned from all the way back then 5 years ago through this, through time till now. So those 5 things are send me 1 statement a month. Consumers will say, I don't understand why I get 7 statements a month and when I could only get 1, right? Give me options to pay my bill, both in terms of the types of payment methods I can use, whether it's a credit card or a bank account, or alternative methods today like a PayPal or a Google Pay, but also give me options that I can afford and that meet my budget. Let me access support in a way that works for me on my time. That's really important because my time might be at midnight, my time might be on Saturday, my time might be when the call center volume is heaviest, right? So, give me ways to access support when I need it. Also, send communications to me both in terms of my preference. So that might mean, I prefer text over email, but also tailor them in ways that I want to receive them. Let me set those. And that's, it kind of very ties to the way that consumers expect support. And then finally, which Michael mentioned this earlier, as did Will, the accuracy of the bill is incredibly important. I need that bill to be accurate, very clear and transparent. And we'll get into that a little bit, some of the ways I think that you can do that. But again, these are the top 5 things from a very recent survey at St. Luke's. And we're looking forward to diving into each of them with you.
Brilliant. So let's do it. Let's jump in. And I see some questions starting to come in. So please do ask questions as we go through. Hopefully we'll provoke some good dialogue that we can have with everyone at the end of the webinar. So the first one, a single monthly statement. Vince teed this up nicely. Why do I get 7 statements a month? Michael, I'm going to ask you to give your perspective on this. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you've learned here around what consumers are looking for and how you at St. Luke's have tried to meet that expectation?
Sure. I think, and I'd mentioned a little bit of this before, but a lot of our patients have interactions with other service providers, and so because hospitals and the hospital industry tends to be a little bit behind some of the other sectors, the other sectors begin to sort of set the bar for us and really set the expectations for those patients. They're consumers in other industries, and there are patients. And so, very few times you're going to get a service where you may have multiple services at the same organization, and then all of a sudden you have multiple bills. A lot of times they'll roll up into one monthly statement, and it's fairly easy to pay. And really that's where, a lot of your banking industry has sort of set that expectation of, we get a bill once a month, and, we figure out how to pay it. Versus, every time we have a service, we're sending out a statement, which has been in the past. And so, it's the one statement where they can see all of their services. That becomes important to our patient population who, as Vince mentioned, these are busy patients, and they may not have 8 to 5 Monday through Friday open to call us and figure out their bills. They need a one-stop shop that they can sort of view and begin to manage that obligation for us as a hospital.
Perfect. Vince, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything Michael said. The thing I would add is a dimension on this is, consolidating bills isn't easy. I think if you have one billing system in your health system, lucky enough to have one billing system, that's hard enough to consolidate the bills within that system. It gets really hard when you might have multiple billing systems, or you're going through a migration like St. Luke's was from one system to another. And I'd say, consolidating across billing systems is equally important, especially when you think about the patient experience. Having a consolidated statement when you're working across billing systems, especially during the migration, is a great way to ensure a continuity of patient experience and a good patient experience as your health system migrates. So that's something that we have done in the past, and I have seen that that getting to that single statement in that migration process is a really powerful way to build that like Will said, that strong brand loyalty, that strong patient trust from the beginning of when you start your migration all the way through, till you get to that one billing system. So I think it's really hard, but it's definitely doable, and I think it's just an important concept as a lot of health systems are going through those migrations today.
Jenny, anything to add to this from Inova's perspective that you want to chime in on?
Sure. We at Inova are a single billing office, so we send our monthly statements out with both the hospital charges and the professional charges associated with each date of service. So those multiple dates of service can be on one statement. However, we send our statements every 30 days. So there is that timing convention that does get in the way of patients knowing really what truly is out there for self-pay for them to pay on, because, things drop into self-pay, once the claim is processed and all of that, and it could not be ready for a statement because it's not within that 30-day window. It has to wait to qualify for that next statement to be reflected. So that's what we were aiming for, is having some more transparency. And I'm taking away my speaking points from the next part that I'll be speaking to, but I think, having the guarantor-based statements every 30 days containing the hospital and the professional charges was important for us. But we just wanted to get to a point to where we are reflecting more real-time status in what the patient balance outstanding is today, rather than in 14 more days when my next paper statement comes out.
Brilliant, Jenny. Thank you. Well, let's go on. Let's you don't steal your own talk track, Jenny. So let's go on to the next one and talk about part number 2, which is one I'm particularly passionate about as a marketer. I get excited about the idea of the revenue cycle showing up, right, in a way that is convenient and helpful and meets the needs of each individual consumer or patient that's engaging with it. So this one is about tailored payment options, which, as Vince described, is both, ways to make payments that meet the needs of the consumer, but also the offer, the financing that you may need to offer a patient who's dealing with a larger balance. Jenny, tell us a bit about how Inova is thinking about this and what you're doing.
Absolutely. Okay, so from our journey of our past self-pay statement billing, we billed out on paper statements, and then if patients wanted to pay their bill, they either mailed it in or they paid online with MyChart, or they called into the customer service department and actually needed to speak to a representative to process their payment over the phone. So I'm very passionate about building this project with the Inova partners that have been in on the implementation of what we're doing with VisitPay, and giving them the flexibility and ease in offering way more options for them to pay their bill, rather than having to, not necessarily just call and speak to someone. I need my customer service reps on the phone handling, real customer service issues, not just processing a payment. I kept saying there has to be a better way. We're Inova, we're the largest healthcare organization in the DC and Northern Virginia area, so we need to up our technology and offer our patients more flexibility. So, for our business hours, we were missing the boat on a lot of opportunity for cash collections to continue when we were closed for business. So we have implemented the VisitPay online portal and the GuestPay make a one-time payment. So our patients can become a registered user with VisitPay and set their own finance plans, or their payment plans without interest also. We have a current, well, it's not current anymore, but we had a program here where we had to physically set up the payment plans over the phone for patients. If they could not resolve their balance within that 120-day billing cycle and avoid going to bad debt placement, we needed to offer some finance plan options. So we had a team handle that, but we could not put them all on one consolidated payment plan. The payment plan would be, there would be one payment plan for each service area, and that is not a good patient experience. To have perhaps five multiple payment plans going at the same time can be confusing. Payments can be missed, inadvertently sent to bad debt. So we wanted to make this a seamless, easy product. So now we offer up to 6 months interest-free. So they're buying themselves 2 more extra months to be able to pay their self-pay balance down. And we've gotten really great feedback on that a lot of people can't pay a $5,000 bill in 4 months, but giving them the option of enter into a payment plan for 6 months, that was doable. And so we've offered that with the VisitPay platform. We also offered them to just make a partial payment on the guest payment, basically a one-time payment. They can use it multiple times if they'd like. But if they just simply don't want to call into customer service and they just want to pay, a little chunk at a time, we allow for that too. We went live with those features November 1st of 2018, and we have seen a significant satisfaction with users being able to have those options for flexibility and convenience. And also, our results have been staggering. I think that we as a group operationally and through our IT systems and VisitPay worked together so well to build this how we wanted it, that we have come out the gate and been very successful with our results, with both number of registered users and the dollars that we've collected in a short amount of time. And so it really has hit the ball out of the park with what we were expecting. And it's just proving our hypothesis that we open up the lines of ability, and our patients they want it, and they want more control over their bills and how to pay, and they're taking full advantage of it. So we also have the IVR function that we went live with oh, I should go back to the payment plans. So we can do up to 6 months interest-free based on the balance. We've set those parameters as Inova and what we thought was doable and fair. And then we have established finance plans also for we've implemented a tiered interest rate for payment plans of 7 months up to, I believe, 5 years. So long-term payment plans with low interest. Of course, what our thought there was let's offer up to 6 months interest-free because we want our patients to pay their bills quicker and faster, but not send them to bad debt. Give them the option if that's really not, if they can't do that with their financial situation, we have options for them to go long-term with a low-tiered interest rate. So that has been very successful. We also have gone through with the automation of our auto pay by phone feature through the IVR. 30% of our calls that were coming into customer service were payment related. So our payments were just being processed over the phone. It took up our call center capacity. We saw high call volumes consistently. And like I said earlier, I want the customer service reps to provide that excellent customer service in helping to navigate questions and provide patients with answers to why they owe a bill rather than spending that time with just processing a payment when we could automate it. So we went live with that early December, and that has also been very successful. So, and that both of these features, the online and the auto pay by phone, has allowed us to continue to accept collections and payments over these platforms 24/7. And you know, who wants to just pay their bill from 8 to 4:30? Not many of us. And I think that we've all had a gas bill or a cable bill, and we don't want to talk to anybody. We just want to pay our bill and be done with it. And I think that's where we have really opened up and paved the way for Inova to allow that flexibility and convenience to our patients.
Brilliant, Jenny. That's an awesome overview of that whole space. You touched on so many points, and it's provoking questions as well, which is great. So I think what we'll do is let's go on, Abby, to the next point, so we can have more time at the end to address those questions. The third area that we highlighted was easy and immediate access to support. So I'm gonna ask Vince to take the lead on talking about this one. Vince, what have we learned that consumers are looking for here?
Yeah, thanks, Will. I think the number one thing we've learned is consumers want to access support in the way that they prefer, they want to access. What we find is there's a pretty strong split between consumers who are willing to use like a chat tool as opposed to consumers who would rather not use a chat tool and call in. But some people just love chat, right? And some people want to have that bi-directional, immediate fulfillment that you get through other sites. Some people have had probably because they've had bad experiences in other realms or other online forums, don't like chat tools. So first and foremost, is provide options, a variety of options to communicate so consumers feel like they're in control when they're communicating. And for the consumers, whether they're doing it in real time or not, to feel that information is being shared. Because normally when consumers are contacting a call center in a financial experience, it's because they have a question or there's something that they need to resolve. And oftentimes they think the bill is wrong. And something, St. Luke's did that really smart from day one when they launched VisitPay was they provide all the transparency the consumer needs to see about the bill. And if there's a mistake, they encourage the consumer to contact the health system. Because let's face it, there's going to be billing mistakes in healthcare. It's a complex market. And what we know today is that consumers, like Will said earlier, are willing to pay their bill. They're not going to pay the bill if they think it's wrong. So let's be transparent and let them resolve the bill with your staff. And that's what we see happen a lot in VisitPay. And we see it's one of the big drivers of why people pay their bills at a higher rate. And lastly, ensure there's an empathetic voice on the end. I think our partners, the healthcare system we work with, are all great at this. One thing they have deployed is like auto responses. So there are already set kind of created forms and such to respond to the user, but there's always going to have to be some, some intervention there when the situation's unique. One other thing that's not on the screen is, we all the way back to those 87 breakpoints we mentioned about our work we did with St. Luke's. Consumers actually ask, hey, I need a secure way to send information to the health system. Consumers realize that email is not a secure means, text is not a secure means, so give them the ability to upload forms. If they, if there's a problem with the EOB not reconciling with the bill, they can upload their own EOB and send it to a staff. So that's just another kind of a feature level thing that I think is important, is give them, in addition to give them a variety of ways to communicate, transparent way to communicate, also give them a secure way to communicate. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's great. Michael, anything you want to add to that from your perspective or St. Luke's perspective?
Well, I can add some commentary from some previous experience as well. So when I was running e-commerce for HP, this was probably one of the largest teams that we had, was our chat team. And so really, these consumers, while they might be digital, it doesn't, it sort of leans towards them not wanting to call you and talk to you. And so we found that to be very true. We had a lot of customers that really did not want to call us for any reason. They wanted to chat with us. And then, of course, we had customers that really just wanted to call us and never want to use some of the other tools. But I think the key here is, sort of meeting the patient where they want to be. So, if they want to chat with you, then have that option. If they want to call you, you have that option. And that flexibility in terms of communication is really key.
Yeah, it all kind of comes back to making it as easy as possible for the patient to engage on terms that make sense for them. Is sort of such a common theme in all of these points, really, isn't it? And offering those options. So, thank you. Great perspective. Let's keep going and go on to our fourth thing. So the fourth thing is customized communications. Again, this is one that as a marketer resonates a great deal with me. And it's so interesting, as a bit of an aside, how much marketing thinking and philosophy is sort of imbued in these principles around the consumer-driven revenue cycle. You look at the words on this chart: right time, right channel, right offer. That's marketing right there, and how these principles can get used in this way. Michael, I'd love you to talk a bit about what you've learned at St. Luke's in terms of how to communicate with the consumer who you're engaging with.
Sure. I think you had hit the nail on the head. It's where does that patient want to communicate? How do they want to begin to communicate? It's a little odd, and this moves more into our traditional call center operations. But most times, most of these call center operations are open 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, and the vast majority of our patients are they're employed, so they have to take off work, or on a break they call us and try to figure out these statements and what they owe and how they're going to pay it. And so we've taken a lot of the information and begun to review sort of when calls arrive and when we need to be open. It's just an example of we're trying to meet sort of that patient where they are, versus, sorry, you're gonna have to call back and on Monday between 8 and 5 and to answer your question or to make a payment. And so, that's one of the nice pieces about the digital channel is, patients begin to choose what's right for them. So when is the right time for them to sort of, do that comparison of their EOBs and their statements? We know that a lot of our patients want to do that, and they do take the time, and they do sort of line up the transactions and make sure that they understand what's happening both from their benefit perspective as well as their statements. And so, through this portal, they can see both sort of side by side, which is really nice. So they sort of begin to choose where and how they want to see that information. if they'd like to see customized emails, and so they can go in and sort of, here's when I want to see emails from St. Luke's. Here's when I want to see text. Is it when a new statement is due? Is it when a payment is due? And so they can custom sort of drive, how the tool and how we're going to communicate them and on sort of what basis. From a right offer perspective, a large proportion of our patients begin to drive what that offer really is. And so, they know what they can afford and they begin to opt in. Now, because we've been on the tool for quite longer than most, if not longer than everybody, one of the things that we've noticed is that, we do offer a long-term payment plan, but it does have interest. Now, it's a lot lower than any other mechanism that, they could pay otherwise. So, we pay, it's very low interest, which is a lot cheaper than their credit cards, any kind of line of credit, or anything else that they could borrow against. And so we feel like that's a good spot to be in. Really, our intent is to cover our costs. And so we're happy to extend these payment plans, and we just need you to cover the cost of doing so. But what we found were our best customers were taking longer-term payment plans. And so the right offer is sort of twofold. One is it's the right offer for the patient, but at the same time, we don't want our best patients having the ability to just take out, their obligations over long periods of time. And so because of the data behind the scenes, we can begin to nudge those patients into shorter payment plans. And so right for me is, okay, it has to be right for the patient, but it also has to be the right offer for the organization. I don't want all my payment plans to be 36 months as an example. As if any of you report up into the CFO, he's going to look at your AR inflation and say, what the heck? You offer a whole bunch of payment plans to everybody. We want to try to manage that where appropriate. And so, for those who we think can pay, we'll nudge them towards a shorter duration. And the message is it'll save you money. And those who need it, it's there for them. So I think the right offer is kind of twofold. It's both right for the patient, but also right for the organization. And really,
yeah.
Sorry, Will, go ahead.
No, I was just just jumping in to agree with you. I mean, it makes total sense, and it's all about finding that balance, isn't it, between your policies and what you need, and putting that flexibility and control of the patients. I did want to ask Jenny quickly if she wanted to jump in on this and talk about, Jenny, what you've learned so far about customized communications.
Definitely. Michael's speaking my language. It's a fine line with what you have your directions that you need to do as a business and an organization in getting these bills paid, but also using the compassion and the empathy piece and really working with our patients to allow them the option of paying their bills in a format or a time period that works for them. We have so many patients that their intent is to pay their bill, but they can't make a car payment every single month, in relative terms to what their healthcare bill outstanding is. These are huge financial burdens that they don't enter into willingly. Often it's not a good experience. So offering up this new technology-based tool that allows us to entice the patients to pay sooner and offer arranged payment arrangements that allow them to pay over time, we are really doing ourselves a favor by not seeing that money just go to bad debt and further impacting the patient experience. We also have customized our messaging through the portal when a statement is ready and when a payment is past due. We also send pre-collect letters that let them know that if an account is not on a payment plan and it's just available in VisitPay as an electronic user, they see their statement online and they can manage their bills that way. But if they're not entered into a established payment plan, we let them know when something is aging out and it's the potential to go to bad debt is imminent, and so we send out messaging related to that. We let them know when their credit card is about to expire, so then we don't see any hiccups with the arrangement that they've committed to paying. So really just having that communication without bombarding them with phone calls, it's convenient for them to go in and read their emails and get these notifications, log into the system and really take care of their bills and keep them on track.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Jenny. Thank you for that, adding that perspective. It's wonderful. So we've covered 4 of our 5. We've got 1 more to go. We've got lots of questions, and we're moving now quickly towards questions. But if you want to ask a question now is a good time to do it. Stick it in the tool, and we'll get to it before the top of the hour. Let's go to our last thing. Clarity, transparency, and accuracy. Possibly the hardest one, actually, to get right. Jenny, why don't you get us started here and talk about your perspective on this one?
Okay. So clarity, transparency, and accuracy was very important to Inova to offer their patients in their self-pay billing experience. It was important for us that the information that is displayed be up to date, showing the most recent and real-time information online, rather than waiting for a paper statement, which could, naturally have delays in actually reaching the patient due to mail times and statement vendor and when they get the files sent out and when they're actually sending those payments or those paper statements out. This cuts down a lot on the patient dissatisfaction and the escalation surrounding the paper statement experience. We were getting a lot of phone calls from dissatisfied patients that were stating that they had never received their first statement, and we were calling them as a self-pay outbound collections team at statement level 2. So we provided our own window of time to give patients a chance to get their first statement, see what is outstanding, and for them to be able to arrange payment or call into customer service. But we were resoundingly hearing that they weren't getting, there was issues with the mail, or they didn't receive it, or went to an incorrect address, whatever was registered in the system. There's numerous factors that go into those delays. So it was really important for us to be clear on, what is actually owing. Accuracy, these are real-time billing updates. So when an account has moved into a self-pay balance, that Epic translates that information into VisitPay, and we see it within the next business day, just depending on the file transfers. But that gives the patient the ability to log in and see exactly what they owe and what just dropped into patient responsibility balance to be collected. And transparency, breakdown of costs. We went live with the EOB integration so that the explanation of benefits for 5 or 6 payers we have built into our portal, where patients can see how their insurance paid, what is the contractual write-off, what is the other insurance that they have, their secondary, how they paid, and really giving them more of a one-stop shop for why they owe what they owe. So the patient responsibility factor, after all of the payments and adjustments and self-pay discount or what have you, it really breaks it down and gives the patient an insight into what resulted in their patient balance, essentially. We also have the ability to have our patients see their own payment history. So that was a feature that was really exciting for us to offer to our patients. We were receiving numerous phone calls at tax time. I'm sure that I'm speaking to the choir. Everyone knows this, that tax time, people want their payment history for all of 2018. And those were lengthy process is to go through and pull those payment histories and send that out to patients. And this way they can see that in one place. They can click the payment history tab and they can export their own information and have that documentation ready to go right now. We wanted a more of a self-service approach to consumer payments as a whole. And so we on the Inova side have historically been using MyChart for our patients, and they can see their record and they can make their appointments and they could pay their bill online. So we worked hand in hand with our marketing team to really call to attention this new way to pay with using VisitPay. And so we have integrated the link to MyChart to VisitPay so that the patients can move as seamlessly as possible across different points to pay their bill. So we created basically what a fork in the road from our prior way of paying online, which did not allow long-term finance plans or anything, and it did not protect the accounts from going to bad debt. So with VisitPay, that was a huge increase in patient satisfaction and their experience. But we've linked MyChart to move directly to VisitPay as the way to pay. And so I think we learned a lot from our go live. We actually, we did a email outreach to people who used the former portal, just to let them know that we're going to be going live with VisitPay, and this is the way that they'll pay their bills online going forward. And we did learn some lessons from that, but I think that we did what we could do, and I think in hindsight we could have formatted the emails a little more clearly to say you're going to have to sign up for you're going to have a new login and new credentials. But that was really our only hiccup. And so I think we learned a lot from it. And the survey results that we have received since then, we have been at a satisfaction rate of 85 to 96% straight out the gate from our implementation. And that was way beyond what we thought, and it was so satisfying to see those great results come through. So giving the patients the clarity and the transparency and the accuracy and in using the portal and ease of payments and ease of finance flexibility, I think we're feeling really great about it, and so we're measuring that across the board monthly.
Great stuff, Jenny. That's, again, an awesome summary of a lot of information, so thank you. I want to move us into questions. So, Michael, do you want to just summarize this from St. Luke's perspective? And if you can be brief in the next slide, then let's do that, and then let's move into questions. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, sure. So, so we continue to evaluate our overall experience. And I mentioned before, our top box score is 28%. And through a variety of efforts, now our top box score is 57%. So we've really seen a really nice improvement in our overall experience performance, of which VisitPay is a big part of that. So you can start to see the comments here. Back to you, Will.
Actually, you have one more chart as well, which maybe you can just cover briefly.
Yeah, sure. So as part of our sort of front-facing UI design process, we wanted to make sure that we took into account, patient wants and desires. And you can start to see here, this encompasses a lot of what, patients and what we had alluded to before. So, we can brand this tool in our own image. Of course, all of this is HIPAA compliant, but then you start to see here both clarity as well as flexibility in terms of what the patient owes, where it's coming from, and then, they can make payments fairly quickly or gather additional information on that front page. And so, we've taken a lot of this feedback, circled it back, and, in terms of VisitPay's flexibility and able to sort of meet those needs, they've done that. So we're very happy with the product.
Perfect. Great. Then let's transition into questions. As we go there, I just want to highlight an opportunity for all of you to engage with a new tool that we have. So we've heard a lot from Vince, Michael, and Jenny about the sort of important ways of raising consumer satisfaction with the billing experience and giving consumers what they're looking for within the parameters and policies that you define for your health system. This makes people happier, right? It lifts their perception of your brand. But of course, there's a strong financial outcome for the health system as well. Patients that are engaged and happier with the process are going to pay more. And we can talk about that in the questions in a minute. I encourage all of you to go to our website and play around with our calculator here, because what this will show is the likely yield lift, the likely increase in self-pay collections that our clients typically experience. And you can enter your own numbers for your own health system and get a personalized report showing what that opportunity looks like. And let's go on to questions. Please, Abby, on the next page. And you can see the URL is there for the calculator, so you can have a play around. But let's start with that financial outcome. So there was a great question that came in. What is the financial impact at St. Luke's and at Inova? And Vince, maybe you can comment on any other clients as well. Michael, do you want to start with that one? And can you talk about what have you seen happen to the bottom line as a result of all of these initiatives we've been discussing today?
Yeah, sure. It's a really long answer, but I'll try to make it as short and as concise as I can. One of the big ahas in this whole process is, how can you begin to monetize experience? And so that's the approach that we took was, what's the value on the per point? And there's two sort of value points. One is, patients, to Will's point a little bit earlier, patients pay more quickly and more often. And so the dollars on the patient payment side go up, and then the cost overall goes down. And so, so you have the tool, and now the patient is able to be as flexible as they want, contact you and manage their accounts, and they're much happier in terms of being able to do that. The data is much more clear. And then, of course, we give them a lot of the options that they wanted. And so, what we've seen is, we've seen about a 30% jump in our yield rates and about a 50% drop in our cost footprint as you move patients from sort of an old, poor experience process to a much better process and tool.
Brilliant. Jenny, anything you want to add to that from Inova's perspective? I know you're sort of getting going, but any perspectives?
Yeah, it's really too soon to tell. Seriously, we've gone live. November 1st. So we're just now starting to see those first users. What is the instance of placing a bad debt? And it's very low right now, but we also know that is, we're just right out the gate in seeing what is actually going to go. So yeah, it's too soon to tell, but the dollars coming in is looking good.
That's a good start, right? Vince, is there any perspective you want to add?
Sure, I could just briefly add that across all of our clients, we see a minimum of a 30% increase in patient payments, which translates exactly to a 30% decrease in the amount of bad debt that you're writing off. So that is a consistent number across our clients, and in some cases, or in most cases, it's higher, but that is the conservative the number we share is a 30% increase in patient payments.
Yeah, great. Let's keep going. And Vince, maybe you could start us off with this next one. We've talked a lot about finance plans, a lot about essentially the health system becoming a lender to the consumer.
Sure.
So how do you ensure compliance with fair consumer lending practices?
Great. Yeah, great question. Thanks for asking it. This is something we take really seriously, and our clients take really seriously, is compliance with all federal and state lending law. The two big ones that most people are aware of are the Truth in Lending Act, which comes into effect when I'm generating any form of a loan or lending money, and then the other one is the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which would come into effect in a variety of ways when I'm generating a loan or reporting on the performance of a loan. So to speak about VisitPay for a second, we do generate with every single loan that gets created a state and federal compliant, and this is important, a state and federal compliant lending agreement, and so that the consumer has to sign off on that, whether they or accept it verbally if it's being done through a call center. And then of course we think it's really important that you take into account all of the aspects of the FCRA and any other Truth in Lending Act laws when you're actually making loans, especially if you're doing that on a varied basis to consumers based on either their ability or propensity to pay. So really important question, and it's something that you really have to take into account when you are generating loans.
Linked to it is a question about charging interest, and Michael and Jenny, you both alluded to the fact that you have interest-bearing payment plans. Do either of you want to give a perspective on, the question was, is interest charged to the patients using financing options? And I think the answer for both of you is yes. But do you want to give a perspective on how you perceive interest as a tool, how interest is helpful to you and fair to the consumer? Do either of you want to talk about that, Michael and Jenny?
Yeah, I mean, I can. So, what we do is we charge interest on payment plans greater than 12 months. And we would say that they're fairly reasonable rates. I think we're at a 5% interest and 8% interest respectively. So, 12 to 24 is 5 points, and above 24 to 36 is 8. And so I'd mentioned this before, but I don't think a consumer can get a loan with that low of an interest rate. So, we're not trying to make money necessarily on interest per se. We're really just trying to cover our cost of capital. So if you know it or not, hospitals are sort of a bank. They lend money, they borrow money to lend money. And so really we're just covering our cost of doing that. And we think that that's the right approach to help, patients when they move into a service or an obligation they didn't necessarily plan for.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I would just add to what Michael's saying is that oftentimes the only alternative a consumer has is to put the obligation on a credit card that they have, oftentimes almost always exceeding 10%, oftentimes in the 19 to 20% range. So providing a modest interest rate in lieu of that seems like a really reasonable thing to do.
So we have 1 minute left. Oh, sorry, Jenny, did you want to jump in?
No, I just said definitely. That is the key there. That's a very low interest rate. And what I love is that each health system can tailor the terms and the interest according to what they think is best for their business. And like Michael said, they do up to 12 months interest-free, and we do up to 6 months interest-free. So, but we also offer 2.5% to 6% as our interest tiered approach on 7 months or longer. So I think that's really a window into that convenience and flexibility is determining our structure that we want.
Yeah, and we're all learning together, I guess, as well, Jenny and Michael, right? Which is super interesting. So I'm conscious of time. We're at the top of the hour. If you asked a question and we didn't answer it, I'm sorry we didn't get to it. We had lots. We will respond with written answers to those questions we didn't get to. And Isla, let me hand back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Will. And like Will said, that is all the time that we have for today. But I want to once again thank Vince, Jenny, Will, and Michael for their excellent presentation, and VisitPay for sponsoring today's webinar. And please enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to having you join us for future webinars.